name is Joseph Carlson. This is Grief of Politics, episode 48. I am joined by my co-host, Avin Carroll. How you doing, Avin?
I am doing okay. And yourself, Joe?
Good. Basically good, except I've had
As
to...
well as can be.
I think what it is, I've kind of unplugged from the news for a bit, but now I'm replugged back into the news. So listening to podcasts and reading news and getting every scrap of everything, you know, it was great to unplug a couple weeks ago before the election because I did that purposely. But then plugging back in, it's not great all the time. Just as a
See all the things you've missed.
yeah, yeah. So to be clear, I wanted to title this episode "Failing Upward," and I know I told you that a few days ago before we recorded because we talked about what we were going to talk about, and I know
Yep.
you ended the phone call with a question mark of like "failing upward?" question mark. Is that a weird title for you? Because I can explain to you why I got that title and what I've been thinking about and why I wanted to call it that.
This is kind of a rare instance where we haven't really talked a whole lot about all the stuff we're going to cover in advance. We sort of pivoted on this one at the last second.
Well, there's a lot going on, so it's like, where do you want to
Huh.
focus? You know.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, go over it. Why failing upward, Joe?
Well, I think I've been thinking about it a lot, and obviously being very plugged into the news. There was several buckets, and we can talk about it when we get into the episode because I sent you many articles. Some of them were very long, but the idea is, listen, I'm just going to be honest. We talk about media bias. If you're on the left, like I am, if you're a liberal hippie like I am, you see, and we talked about it too when Trump announced his appointments. A lot of these people are not morally, it seems, very good people, and then even on Republicans and people in their camp are expressing a lot of doubt about them and things like that. And it seems like, they're not qualified. They're not really meant for the job that they're doing. You can make the argument that they're going to mix it up. But the idea that many of Trump's appointments are like, the more we find out about them, it seems like they're not great people. And I understand all politicians have flaws and we're like, but this even seems like a step below that, And what I'm
Yeah.
seeing in the international arena is, I mean, we can get into it when we talk about it, but like I have it up on the screen. But like the idea that I've been very critical about what's been going on with Israel and the war in Gaza and Hezbollah, and I believe obviously in Ukraine that Ukraine has a right to sovereignty because it's a sovereign nation. But there's been a lot of talk about should we send them weapons with Israel? Should there be a red line? And it seemed
Mm.
like all of this contributed to Syria collapsing and the government collapsing and a dictator, Assad, having to flee to Russia. And so it's
Right.
like, man, we really just fell into this when every human rights organization near Israel is saying, hey, they're committing a genocide. Oh, but it kind of worked out. And politically, locally, nationally, in America, in the United States, oh, these people aren't meant for office, but they might make it through. Hegseth is allegedly committed sexual assault. It may not have been credible, but a woman that may be on the fence that was a senator. I totally forget her name. I should have written it down for this, but she was a survivor of sexual assault, or maybe a congresswoman. She's a survivor of sexual assault. She served in the military. Everybody thought, well, she's going to be the red line to really look this over and go, that isn't acceptable. Even allegedly, this isn't allegedly acceptable. Even she's gone after the military to clean up sexual assault and get it reported and change the process of that. She's basically going, I had a good talk with them. Everything's going well. Now, again, he deserves his day in court. Apparently, there was
Mm.
some police report files. They don't think they could, in a court of law, they don't think, beyond a reasonable doubt, he could be convicted, but it still seems very kind of up in the air and gray. And it just, I don't know. RFK has now said, and Trump has said that they want to stop, what was it? Polio vaccines came out. Like there was an article came out that they want to freeze that because whatever. And locally, well, even more at a micro level, Luigi Mangione shot a CEO of a major health company,
Yeah,
and
definitely not local.
well, New York. I mean, like even a microcosm of the
About as
U.S.
far from us as it could be,
Right.
short of Florida.
But I'm talking about like the micro thing of we're talking about one
Right,
issue
right.
instead of the nation. We had somebody shoot a CEO in cold blood, and I think two things can be true. One, somebody murder is wrong, right? It's totally wrong. Vigilante justice is not the way to go. But
Right.
I'd like to push back on the narrative that I'm seeing on the right of the left gleefully celebrating this murder. I don't think I'm not saying that hasn't happened. I have seen some comments that have been troubling, but what I've seen more of is comments of people examining the U.S. healthcare system, and it took the murder, the cold-blooded murder of a CEO. Not like it's not like we've never talked about healthcare, but like now it's back nationally being talked about. Like we should really talk about this healthcare system that is bankrupting people and everybody is upset about it. And it seems like, wow, so this murder kind of renewed this talk of something that most people are unhappy with. And it just seems like instead of having a real discussion about, is healthcare good? Are people running for office? No, it took the murder
Mm.
of somebody for us to be like, well, let's examine this. And I think there's just this big feeling in my brain about, man, it just seems like we're failing, but it's still like producing results in a way. So it's to me, it's like really troubling of like, hey man, like none of these people that Trump elected are great, but like they may get confirmed. And many people, even on the right, are saying like, fine, bring on the tariffs, bring on the mass deportations, let people get what they voted for. I've seen on the right and the left of like, you guys are going to be, whoever voted for this wanted it. They're going to be very surprised when this happens.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
So
and
have I.
so that's kind of like my general feeling of I'm reading all this, and I'm just having this feeling of like, it's the like the ultimate definition of a happy accident of like, oh, that really worked out in a bad way, to maybe benefit us in a way. So yeah, that was my thought of failing upwards, was like this idea of like, oof, I don't like any of this, but it may work out, like you want to see
At the
progress.
very least, there may be some unintended benefits.
Right. Of the
Right.
terribleness, yes. Of the
Right.
so
Right.
that's my kind of thesis while I was hearing all this info and like replugging into the news and just trying to like get my brain straight of like, man, all this is terrible, but like some good stuff might happen. Like I'm not saying we're gonna reform healthcare, but I think the more people talk about it, whoever decides to run on it will be like, hey, we don't have to look way back in the past and talk about Trump trying to repeal Obamacare or Obamacare itself. Like, remember the guy that murdered a CEO in New York? And now we're talking about it. And, I don't know. What do you think? Is that weird? Is that weird for me to have some weird theory? I mean, does it make sense? Am I rambling?
Does it make sense that a lot of these negative things could be turning up positives?
Yeah,
Or
I
your
think
theory
I
on
think it's
just
I think it's the
Mangio?
amount is like it's the amount of negative things that seem to be working out that is troubling. Like it's you know
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'd necessarily say that. I've been toying with this idea since actually before the election that there's a lot of doomsdayism around the election and just
Mhm.
in general around the country of like everything is awful. Take the Lego movie soundtrack of everything is awesome and just change it to
Reverse it.
awful, and that's kind of feels like the general sentiment in the state of media. And
By
it,
the way, as a quick aside, the Epic, the people who make Fortnite, this is just a quick aside of joy. They decided to release a thing called Brick Life, which is a Lego version of GTA in Fortnite that you can play for free. And so I saw a trailer for it and it looks completely absurd. And it just brought me a little bit of joy to be like, yeah, of course, I want to have the banana skin in Fortnite and slip on a banana peel, which they showed in the trailer. It was a little bit of joy. I know that has nothing to do with the conversation, but everything is terrible. And I'm reading all these articles. Being a Lego character in Fortnite brought me joy. So, yes, everything is awesome, and it has to do with Lego. So I brought it into the conversation of the Lego movie. So
Not
play
where I was going with that, but
play Brit.
that was an unintended benefit of my aside here.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I think the point I was getting at, or what I was going to, is sort of this concept I've been dealing with of like the world isn't as awful as everything makes it out to be. Like,
Mhm.
I think, and maybe it's my own social media feed, but like even the tone of the people I talk to, like there's just this sort of general sense of like the world is falling apart,
Mhm.
everything's terrible,
Mhm.
nothing good could possibly happen.
Right.
Everyone's tying their hopes because there's so much before the election, right? Like everyone was tying their hopes to the outcome of this election um, because there's such a general malaise that they're just looking for hope.
Mhm.
And
Well, I have a question.
like there's
Well, I have a question to ask you. You talk to more like conservative, probably voters than I do. Just as
not
an
many,
aside, what?
not many.
Well, probably two or three more than I do. Um, you know, Donald Trump won, so doesn't that
Mhm.
make people somewhat hopeful? Like, oh, he won, he's gonna clean house, basically.
The one conservative friend that was pro-Trump that I see on a pretty regular basis, I've only seen once since the election, and we generally steer clear of politics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, in that group setting because everyone else in the group is not pro-Trump, and I think it would be very uncomfortable in that context. Um, for some of my conservative friends, social media, right? They've been really happy. A lot of them have been out there trying to debunk the things that the corrupt left media is lying about. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there is some of that sort of aspect out there in the conversations, and I say corrupt left media with air quotes, um, which is not to say that there isn't media out there that is 100% showing its bias and has for
Of course.
years. But um, yeah, I would say for the people that are genuine Trump believers, I think that there is like hope. Okay, we can save the country. Okay, Americans actually voted for patriotism and want to move the country forward and are rallying against the woke
Mm-hmm.
mob.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my sense is that most Americans, and so the portion of Republicans and conservatives that voted for Trump because the other side is just awful, he is also awful, but he's better than the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I
I
don't
think a
have.
lot of them are looking at this like,
Yeah,
please,
I
please be
mean,
okay.
I don't have the figures in front of me, but I've again totally plugged in online, listening to tons of podcasts like The Bulwark and Pod Save America, and
Mm,
I even listened to Glenn
mm,
Beck
mm,
and his crew talk about Trump's picks for his cabinet. Came out probably like a week ago. The one that I listened to anyway. Um, like there is this feeling of like even people that voted for Trump don't like Trump, but they feel that he will kind of right the ship. So they're like, yeah, he's a horrible person, but man, he's going to be a wrecking ball and just go through this stuff. And I think one of the things that I think
mm.
this theory that I'm working through is like, you know, yes, systems are broken, but should we just burn them down or can we repair them? And I think if you voted for Trump, I believe this is like a big reach for me. It seems like the idea of burning it down seems pretty cool. And this is a reach, but this is like what I've heard from like I
Oh,
mean you can
it's a large part of his rhetoric, right?
yeah, retribution. You know, he talks about retribution.
Well, yeah, the retribution aspect of it, but also like um, close down the Department of Education, reforming the health system, and by yeah, I'm going to bring in RFK and let him go um,
Hog wild on that.
free, do whatever he wants to do within the
Right.
Department of Health.
I
Sort of
heard
that
it
idea
I
before he even got elected.
right. I heard an article.
Um,
Read an article from Bloomberg News this morning while I was waiting for blood work.
mm,
That they're considering privatizing the post office, which has been kind of on the table for a bit. But like for them
mhm,
to, and I will say everybody left or right, all this commentary I'm listening to is like, wow, Biden's like the biggest lame duck in the history of lame ducks. Like the idea that Trump got elected, he's the president elect, but now Biden's just kind of like, what is he doing? He did pardon some nonviolent criminals, which apparently was like the biggest number of nonviolent criminals that have been pardoned. But like other than that, like there was footage of him in the Amazon, like almost walking into the woods. My wife watched that clip and goes, "Where is he going?" and
Oh,
yeah, he pardoned his son. I mean, I guess we could talk about that. I mean,
which was a big frustration in a lot of the media. Yeah.
yeah, even me and my conservative friend, we don't talk about politics anymore, like your friends. But he actually texted me the day Hunter Biden got pardoned. Just a single text that said, "Look who got pardoned today," and I responded. I said, "Yeah, it sucks. Like I don't like it." He never responded, so it's weird that that's what's made it through. But I'll say that, yeah. I mean, my thing is just like it's weird, and so I did have the thing where I woke up the day after the election and was very, you're down, right? The person, but I was even down when Biden won. I was like, oh man, he's sold. But I mean, hey, and we talked about it on the pod of like the idea of like, I'm tired, man. I don't want to like cover this every day or like account for that. And like, we're here again, right? Of like,
Right.
and
And it's going to continue, right? Like there's 4 more years of Trump tweets, Trump arguments, rallies against him. Trump said this, Trump said that we're going to end up having to go through.
right.
And yeah, I mean, I personally think a large part of why people voted against Trump in the last election is because they were just tired of it. But, like you said, Biden currently is a lame duck president, but I think also through his presidency, he didn't manage to get very much through. There were a lot of missteps under his presidency
Well, I
that
think,
have left people like,
I mean,
ugh.
to do a big aside of Biden, I think in the first half of his presidency, there was some bills that were passed that were very popular. But then I think at the end, especially towards the last year and a half, like the foreign policy people were very unhappy with. And there wasn't really a lot of like national legislation that, got passed. It was all like I said, it was front loaded. So if you're a candidate running for president and nothing's really going on, like in the Biden camp and you're Trump and you come in, you just get to suck in all the like, hey, they're not doing anything, right? But like you and I talked about it, Trump had his troubles when, the branches of government weren't his thing. So like, is that going to happen again? They mentioned, extending the tax credit that they passed when he was in office the first term. I don't know. So where do you want to go with this whole failing up thing? I have 3 buckets. I have like Syria, the kind of foreign policy. I have like the kind of rural, like kind of local things of like voters, and I have like the micro of like the New York, the healthcare thing. So like, which direction do you want to go in first while we talk about this stuff?
Oh man, all of
What's some buckets?
all of
That's
the
some
big
crazy.
things, right? I think honestly, if we were to go first with the Syria thing, let's just go in order that you named them because that would be
Okay.
nice and easy. Let's just start with what the heck's going on in the Middle East?
Okay. So first off, I just want to put a
Come
big
on, Russia.
I just want to put a big asterisk on this. It seems like about, man, probably a week ago, a lot of us who've been listening to the news are now experts on Syria. I am not an expert on Syria. I've been reading along with everybody else and listening to news. And the best I could say is this: Assad was a terrible dictator that would throw
Yes.
people in jail, torture people, and kill people.
Yep.
And there were several factions of rebels who I do not know. They basically all have initials. Some of them were
hmm
ISIS. Some of them were Al Qaeda. Some of them have been rebranded. Some of them are from Turkey.
I think they were associated. I don't
Right.
know if they were.
Well, listen, it's very confusing. People that study this stuff know each organization, but basically several
Yep.
rebel groups came
Yep.
together, took Aleppo, and then just moved into Damascus. And what I've heard from some reporting is they thought there
A
was
little more
going
complex than that, but
to
yeah.
right, right,
It
but
feels like it because you wake up one day and they're like, hey, they've taken this incredibly important town. Oh, they've taken Aleppo. Oh, they're marching towards Damascus. Wait, where is Assad? No one
oh,
knows where Assad is. Oh,
he's
he's in Russia.
yeah, he's on a plane in Russia. And
And
that's
he took all of his billions.
right. Apparently, I've heard reports of Assad's military taking their uniforms off and just running away because they also did not like his regime and were like, we're done. And so I think the thing I wanted to highlight, the whole failing upwards, was because he is weakened and that fell and he is now in Russia. Russia has been propping him up for a long time because
Yep.
they need the port of Tatao, I think, or Tataus. Anyway,
They
Russia.
wanted the port. They have a major air base that
Right,
gives them an aerial influence all the way out to Sinai Peninsula.
right,
So, like, it gives them a military presence in the region, which gives them influence in the region.
right. But because of the war in Ukraine, Russia, for whatever you want to say about the war in Ukraine, Russia is busy on another front. And so they've
Yep.
been using resources on the front of Ukraine. I
Yep.
believe that Ukraine is like, again, I'm a liberal hippie. I don't know if, I mean, I'm sure you'd agree. They are a,
Should not make you a liberal hippie, Joe. You believe in the sovereignty of a country. That
yeah,
is
yeah,
not a liberal hippie
right.
ideology.
So like they were invaded and we sent them weapons. Now we could talk about like whatever. Was it the right amount? Should we send whatever? That's a totally different podcast. But like the idea that Russia was busy on another front, that weakened them. And then I think too, Putin probably had several meetings, or at least one where he's like, "What's going on in Syria?" And they're like, "Man, this is kind of a puppet thing. This dude's failing. I don't know where this money's going." And I think even Putin was like, "Listen, let's not tell anybody. Let's just pull." I think now they're pulling their stuff, but I think in the way he was like, "This is not going to look great." But I think because of what was going on in Ukraine, that fell, and now Assad's in Russia. I've heard the joke that like, how long is he going to be in Russia? Is he going to fall off a balcony in Moscow? Because what use is Assad now to Putin? I would
He offers absolutely no value
no
to
value
Russia.
whatsoever. Like, what are you doing here?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so like that is a way that it's like, okay, that's a failed state. Now, to add to this conversation, there's been a lot of talk in internationally about the leader of the resistance, who I don't actually have his name, but I've heard it. I've heard it so much. He basically was. He was involved in like not 9/11, but like attacking in Iraq. He was at war with basically U.S. troops. And now we want to take him off they want to take his organization off the terror list. He gave an interview and has given several interviews to like CNN and some reporters where he's kind of saying the right things. He's like, listen, I understand we need to build a coalition of people because, I can't discriminate against, we had the Kurds with it. We had Turkish soldiers with us. We have Druze, which again, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but he's basically saying kind of good things, right? Like we need to work together. That's kind of a great thing for a leader to go, hey, we pulled this off and now we really need to work together to build a nation. Now there's a lot of talk about sanctions, like, hey, we need money because we're rebuilding a country. Syrians want to return because they've been exiled or they've left, they're refugees.
What?
Yeah, they fled because they're like, I don't want to be arrested. Totally makes sense. Apparently, the jail, Assad's jail, when it was opened, they found someone in there that got jailed in 1985, is what I heard, or like the mid 80s.
Dang.
So, I mean,
I heard all the evidence of torture and like just the crazy
right.
amounts of torture and way they would torture, but I didn't hear that they found a guy from that long
There
ago.
was a guy in like 2000 and something. So like some people don't know what smartphones are because obviously those were like a mid 2000s thing. So what do you think about like this idea of failing upwards of like all this stuff was happening? Israel was bombing Hezbollah, right? But now Israel is trying to take land in Syria because it like the Golan Heights and all this stuff, and people are like, "Hey, man, that's not really how you take land anymore. Like you have an agreement and all this stuff, and you're kind of bombing into Syria. Like there's some talk about that, but like the idea that Israel did play a role because of them attacking Hezbollah, that weakened Syria and weakened the area, and like it's weakened Iran basically, and like it's all this thing of like it did kind of work. So like all the stuff we talked about of like, is this a war crime of them? All these things that Israel is doing, it's like, well, it kind of worked out, that like they were doing all these things that could be terrible, but it did weaken like Assad and his regime. And I don't know. Again, it's just one of those things where you're like, wow, it really worked out, like it didn't seem like it should have worked out, but it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
There was okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on with Syria specifically, right? Like Assad's been a terrible person forever.
yeah,
You go back to 2015, the rebellion was going on. Russia stepped in and gave a lot of help, and in
right.
exchange,
Yep.
I don't know if it was directly pro quo, but like in exchange, they got access to a lot of the land, gave them a ton of influence in the area, and they had been protecting Assad through the end of the rebellion,
Right.
which the article you shared, it ended in 2017. Um, then move forward to now, Israel's fighting Hamas, all that's going on.
And Hezbollah. They're
Uh,
fighting Hezbollah too.
Hezbollah keeps sort of lobbing missiles over at him. Eventually, Israel's like, okay, we're in a position now. We're going to go gut Hezbollah. They go and get Hezbollah. Um, Iran responds, and so they go in and they prove that Iran is essentially just a puppet, a puppeteer. They don't actually have any real power or force.
Right.
And I think that on top of that, you add in the U.S. election and Trump coming in. A lot of people are going, "Hey, the world's kind of unstable. Everyone's real distracted. Let's go." And so they pack up, they get in the van, they call all their buddies in, and they run for it.
Yeah.
And
It's a big
and it
van,
worked.
but yes, yes.
Yeah, right. Very big van.
It's a big van.
The rebels there knew Assad couldn't call in Iran. Iran wasn't going to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
They've already been weakened. They knew that Hezbollah was completely ineffectual at this point in time. They've been absolutely gutted. And, Russia's severely distracted, so let's take a chance. And you know what? It worked extremely well for the rebel group to go in and do that. From what I've seen for Israel, Israel's taken advantage of the opportunity to eliminate the chemical weapon stores in Syria, a lot of other weapon caches, because they don't want those to fall into the hands of the rebels and be used against them in the future, or for that matter, to end up in Hezbollah's hands. I hadn't heard about them taking land. I saw a headline the other day.
Well,
that did not
they're
about
pushing
Golan Heights.
they're pushing like pushing forward and
Orders.
yeah, oh here we go
Yeah.
with the thumbs up. They're pushing forward and they've also set up command posts. So people are like we're kind of worried they're just going to keep the command post there, like they're not going to dismantle them after the war. Now again, all this could be negotiated after, there's a ceasefire,
Right.
the block
And what Israel's doing is also equally opportunistic.
Oh yeah, they're like, hey,
Ultimately,
no
we'll see
one's
what ends
over
up
here.
happening.
Yeah, they're like, no one's over
Exactly.
here. They just take,
There's no one
take
here
all
to
the-
defend this land. Let's take it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, ultimately, we'll see what ends up happening on that aspect of it, right? All of this is unfolding. But 100%, the world is in chaos in that. And the fringe benefit, the unintended benefit of all of this is Assad's out of power. Syrians can actually look at their country again and be like, hey, can I go home? Like, there's going to be a lot of work. It's not stable. The government's barely anything at the moment, right? I think the prime minister still has power. And
Yeah,
met with the
he's.
rebel leader.
I heard he's going to be like an intern until the beginning of next year, till like March, until they have like an election or a committee.
And they're going to have to rebuild their government and probably build it off of whatever old model they had pre-Assad, but I don't know.
The new whoever the governmental body is, hopefully they have some kind of like, again, that leader was like sticking to his words of like, we need to work together. So maybe there'll be a coalition of like, hey, you're Muslim, this is a Christian bloc, this is the Muslim voting arm, these are the Druze, is there the Kurds, like maybe they, like whoever's there, like hopefully. And again, I just say to people that are, there's some people, not even on the right or the left, just warmongers that are like, man, now's the time. I've heard people on the right especially say we need to move in there and like, start talking about American interest and like it's like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. Like we can't just Trump where he's like, we need to leave it alone. It's like, well, I mean, they've said.
I get that. I get I get both arguments, actually. In my own personal opinion, if we look at American intervention in the Middle East over forever, for as long as we've been intervening in the Middle East, attempting to push our sway.
Since the first sun rose over the Middle East, and we decided like, hey, maybe we should do something over there.
No, I mean, it's probably the 1950s or 60s or so before we really started exerting our power and authority, right?
Well, I mean, the West,
the formation
it was like
of Israel.
1900, yeah.
Well, yes, but I think. Well, actually, no. I think a lot of that was still England, but that's.
Well, I'm talking about the West in
saying the
general
United
of like.
States.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
No. I'm talking us, the U.S.
Yeah.
Right? Like our intervention in the Middle East has had large amounts of unintended, long-standing consequences. Right? Like it feels like every time we try to do something for good, it ends up being 2 generations later, there's massive amounts of strife, suffering, frustration, anger that comes out of it. So, in this situation, I think the United States' best position is to take one of like, hey, Syria, like, you've got your freedom back. We will help you however you ask, in whatever way we possibly can, but it's your future to plot,
Do you think
not ours.
Do you think we should lift sanctions because they need money, right? So like a lot of people are like, "Oh man, I don't know."
It's not the Assad regime anymore. So, let's
They're
see
on,
what's going on,
you know,
right?
they're
Like that the rebel organization had been classified as a terrorist organization. That leader was closely affiliated with um, Al Qaeda and was partnering with them, I believe. I don't remember his connection to ISIS. I feel like he was partnering with them just because they were the enemy of the enemy.
right, right.
But
Well,
maybe
I
I
mean,
haven't read that right.
who
Like you, I don't know the past very well.
I don't know. Again, is he telling the truth or whatever? Because apparently, obviously in war, really bad stuff happens. And like, hey, man, your people were involved with killing civilians, and he's like, hey, I. That's why I left the organization. Is like I saw where it was going. I was like, I don't want to do that. But
So,
I'll
from
say
a
that.
sanctions standpoint, maybe roll them back specifically, right? Like we're going to roll back on sanctions related to food. We're going to roll back specifically on sanctions related to medical
Yeah.
aid, so that can come in, so that can be shared, and we're going to monitor it really close. If you're not responsible with it, we're going to zip things back up again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of that way too, where I'm like, hey, I think we've talked about it a couple times on this pod. When it comes to international stuff, sooner or later you have to sit down with your enemy and work something out, right? So it's like, hey,
Well, this isn't our enemy anymore, right? Like
yeah.
it
Well, I
sounds like
mean,
that guy's
they were on the terror
policies
list and
and
all that.
priorities have completely changed, right? Like
Yeah,
he's um he's also a human being, right? What do humans do over time? They become older and wiser.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing
So
of like maybe he's probably very he's Syrian and he's very. I heard he met with like an Egyptian reporter, I think with CNN or no, she wasn't with CNN. She's just an Egyptian reporter, and she said, the thing is he understands what this looks like, but like they want their country back. They want to. Yeah,
an evil dictator, right? Like
yeah.
there are very few people on planet Earth that defended Assad.
One of them might come
Very
up in the next block. One of them might come up in our next block with that Trump's cabinet picks.
yeah.
Uh,
So we'll see, right? I mean, I agree with you. This is a at least tentatively positive unintended uh consequence.
yeah. So
Benefit.
so
Unintended benefit.
yeah.
Could come back to that.
So yeah. I mean, I think take them at their word and give them time to try. I mean, with Trump coming in, you literally maybe if you take them off the terror list, you say, guys, you're on a clock. So make whatever you're going to do count because
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen when the new guy
We're
comes
gonna
in.
keep our hands off. We're not gonna do anything. Keep your neck clean, right? Like work on your own stuff. Don't
Yeah.
worry about the rest of the world.
Yeah.
If we start seeing stuff
You
coming out of there that disturbs us, you're gonna get a warning,
yeah
and
you
then you're gonna pay a price.
you have a month basically until the new guy comes in and if everything changes. So like yeah, I mean I'm optimistic again. You sooner or later you need to sit down even if these people are on the terror watch group list and they have sanctions. You have to sit down and say, hey, this is a clean break. We're gonna give you guys whatever, we're gonna give you guys a shot. It's a new day. So I think that's kind of like I'm kind of that, like it did make me a little hopeful because I guess even when they went into Damascus to fight, these rebels were like there wasn't really a lot of resistance. So even like I said, the soldiers were sick of Assad and were like, "You're here, great," which is, I mean,
We'll take almost anything right now. We're so
yeah,
frustrated.
yeah,
Please, please, please don't be horrible, torturous, sadistic jerks.
yeah. Don't do the opposite of what the last regime did. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, I say this article from the Atlantic. Trump is about to betray his rural
Yeah.
supporters,
Yep.
and it really covered like these big issues that Trump has uh, Trump is campaigned on. There was an article in Time because he's a Time Person of the Year. I know a lot of people on the left were upset, and I was like, "Hey, man, he is the biggest personality of the past year." Like it
I,
didn't.
I didn't read the article, but I actually saw a headline that he's not just the Time Person of the Year. He's asterisked.
What does that mean? What is why is he
I
asterisk?
don't know. I didn't go any further than that. But it sounds to me like he's the Person of the Year with an asterisk. Like, a qualifier. He's the person of the year because he's the most like commanding presence, not because we think he's a necessarily good positive figure. I
Mm.
don't know. I have no idea, but from time, it seems like that's probably where their bent would be.
Yeah, I'll say this.
Uh,
Like, I just want to preface this next block by saying I am also an American citizen, and
mm,
these things that Trump is proposing sound bad, and they sound very inflationary to the budget, and it doesn't sound like it's going to help us in the long run. I am not one of those people that are like, yeah, if you wanted tariffs, you people are going to get tariffs. Like, wait, I live here too. I'm going to get tariffs. Wait a minute, you're going to do mass deportations? That's going to affect the price of food. I don't want that. And these people are going to be ripped out of their homes, right?
I
I don't
mean,
want that.
this article has it really just was more reinforcement and deeper knowledge on the individual segments related to the tariff process for me.
Right,
I've already known like guys, tariffs are bad.
right, right.
Like they sound good and you can use them in certain contexts. They do have some benefits, but in the way that they're being touted, they're bad. Um, this article highlighted something that I had forgotten that Trump had already imposed tariffs in his first term, smaller amount and
Mm-hmm.
more targeted,
Mm-hmm.
and that already hurt farmers.
Right.
And it goes on to highlight that, like, in the most rural areas, people voted for Trump 69% to 31%, I think is what the breakdown was.
Yeah, probably.
And in, like, the next step up, it was still 60-40.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, people are overwhelmingly voting for Trump in these counties, and he's going to hurt their way of life the most
If
just in the pocketbook.
if he's able to pull off like the things he says, because some,
Assuming he moves forward with his plans, right?
yeah,
Like this is the thing people don't think about, right? So you and I had talked about tariffs before, and I had brought up, right, like, tariffs may have some good unintended consequences. It might be, or actually, tariffs might do what I think they're trying to do. They
mm-hmm.
may actually do what I think Trump's intention is. I think Trump's intention is I'm going to make it so expensive to bring over products, manufacture products in foreign countries that you will bring it back to the States and do it in the States and give Americans job. I think that's what he's trying to do. And in some regards, that might happen and it might be good. But there's a flip side to that coin. And that flip side of that coin is when you do that to foreign countries, you start a trade war. And what does China do? What does Mexico do? What does Canada do? They're like, fine, we're going to do the same thing to you. We're going to stop buying your stuff. The United States is not a net exporter. We are a net consumer. We
Mm-hmm.
have been for decades. We
Mm-hmm.
do not
Yeah,
export anywhere near as much as we import. If you harm even just a little bit of what we export, you are doing damage to our economy. And what Trump is proposing is going to do exactly that. Already, I didn't know this, but the author brought up during his first term, he imposed tariffs on China. And guess what? Soybean sales in the United States went down. So the farmers were upset. What did Trump do? Trump set up a program and started giving the farmers money from the federal government to offset their lost sales. And the money that they made in tariffs was essentially just given right back to the farmers. So it did nothing. It was a completely moot point. And that was a small um, tariff.
right.
Since then, China, to protect itself, has now been buying the same products from, I believe it was soybeans, from South America. I think it was Brazil. And they're buying more
Mm,
soybeans from Brazil than they are from the United States now. So the American farmer never got that business back.
nice. Well, that's
So there
cool.
was that aspect of it. I mean, the article in whole, they talk about the farming thing and how it's going to affect rural areas because of farming. They talk about education and Trump's plans with education and to kind of not to gut, but to do a universal voucher system throughout the United States and how that's going to hurt education systems in
Right,
rural areas. I think that's a much weaker argument in that portion of it, but
right.
I'll let you get to it in a second and I'll hear your viewpoints. And then the other section on healthcare and how these rural areas tend to be more poor. They tend to have less employers that are paying for health insurance, and so uh, larger amounts of the population and far more of the hospitals are reliant on Medicaid. And Trump has also brought up that he wants to gut Medicaid.
Yeah.
So
Also, I didn't include it in the block, but there was articles. I think it was also from the Atlantic that like in areas where there has been abortion access crackdown, that doctors in general are fleeing states like Texas because they just don't want to deal with everything. And so that what that does is bring down the general care
Lowers
for
the
everybody.
quality of healthcare, right?
Right, because more people are leaving.
Yeah.
And so
Even
it's
if it's a small percentage, right? Healthcare's already stretched to the limits as it is throughout much of the United States, and because of that, like wait times are just going to go up.
right. I think this part what I want to talk about is like it's still kind of up in the air, right? We don't know if Trump's going to be able to do the things that he wants to do, you know.
Or if he'll change his mind because he's
Right.
notorious for changing his mind when he
Yeah,
realizes it's actually going to make him look bad.
famously, people will go to Trump and go, "You should not do this," and he tends to not do it. I just think that it's again to be clear, I am an American citizen, and these things sound terrible. And so, just because it affects someone else doesn't mean I want it to happen as well, right? It it just seems like I don't know. I don't even know what the reaction will be if we start these deportations, and how is that going to work? Is the military going to be involved? Are we going to pour money? Because like that's the thing. Are we going to pour more money into ICE for agents to do
Oh yeah,
this? Or
that was the
like
other component they talked about in the rural
yeah,
farmers, the damage there, not just the tariffs, but the deportations and how that will
right,
reduce the amount of workforce for agricultural work.
right.
Yeah, and then extra money for ICE. Um, right? Are we gonna source all of those people and hire them? Right? Where's that gonna come from?
Right. Yeah,
Or are they gonna just start deputizing people that want to volunteer because keep them out?
yeah. I think Also, again, I didn't include in this block, but it just was reported a few days ago that the Department of Defense failed its sixth or seventh audit in a row again. So like another one onto whatever number it was like. They failed like five in a
We've
row, and
talked
now
about
they're
this a few times before, and you've always brought up seven, so this is probably eight if they failed again.
yeah. And then
Although I haven't looked it up, so I don't know.
well, the thing that I'm saying is like this. I mean, there's been they've the Doge Vivek and I don't know if Elon has talked about it, but people around that who said like we want to talk to them, or at least we're open to talking to them around this. They're like, we're gonna have to cut Social Security and Medicare. Like they're really like it seems like that's kind of the plan is they want to cut these entitlements.
Hmm.
I would argue about entitlements when it comes out of my paycheck is an entitlement when you pay into it. I don't know. Uh, I would just say that like, are they going to do this stuff, or is somebody going to go, "Hey guys, what are you doing? What's going on?" And then I've seen what I hate is the pushback on the left of, you know, uh, Doge does want to cut spending, and they mention the Department of Defense, and Bernie Sanders is like, "Great, if you guys want to come to the table and you want to do this and you think it needs to be cut, like I'm totally open to that." And people on the left are like, "Oh, you agree with them?" It's like, yeah, because I'm all about even Ro Khanna, who's a
This
representative.
is an area where I actually agree.
Yeah, that Ro Khanna, who's a representative in California. I've heard long interviews with him, and it was on the Bulwark, and I think Sam Stein was interviewing him. Anyway, he's trying to really put Ro Khanna to the screws. Well, Ro Khanna is from California, and he's like, I've met Elon, I've worked with him. If these are the areas that he wants to cut, and I believe they're good areas, we could work on that together. I do differ with him when it comes to unions and things. Like, I will push back. This isn't me just giving a blank check to start cutting
Right.
whatever. Like, this is how the process works. And then, oh, what about Trump and all this? And he's like, listen, they're the incoming administration. You have to work with people. Are we supposed to stonewall them for 4 years and not work with them? No, we have to work with them. That's how government works and functions. Is I don't agree. Like even me, like I
Right.
didn't,
Right.
I
Right.
didn't, I didn't want Trump to win, but it's like, okay, we'll see what happens now. And as a citizen, I
A
will be,
president, I want him to succeed, not necessarily in what he's doing, but in bettering the United States of America,
yeah. So
improving
like,
the lives of everyday Americans. Right.
yeah. So like, come
This is my thing. Right. Like, everyone's upset with Doge and what Trump's trying to do, and like gutting these agencies. I don't like the way that he's going about it. I don't like that he is seeming to be plowing full steam ahead on his administration of retribution. But I don't know a single American, not one, who doesn't think that our government needs to be more efficient, who doesn't think that our government is slow and cumbersome and can't effectually do its job. So, yeah, maybe some tearing some of these institutions down and rebuilding them back up more efficiently is a good thing.
yeah,
Hopefully that's what happens. Hopefully it's not retaliatory. Hopefully it's not, dropping a nuke from space on these things and then letting people piece together the rubble
Right.
afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of that way too. Like, there is government waste in areas, and we need to address that stuff. You know, I would like to see the Department of Defense get some kind of bite because it seems like every administration, not just Republican or Democrat, seems to increase defense spending, and it's like, are we ever
Well, you can't
gonna?
cut the fence. You can't cut the fence. You can't
Yeah,
cut the fence. Well,
right.
we got to be defended.
Yeah,
We've got enemies. We can't cut the fence.
yeah,
No, no, guys. Like you got to be more efficient.
yeah.
You can't have a bottomless bucket forever.
Yeah,
And
it's
I don't want to cut the fence, but there has got to be places to find efficiency in the Department of Defense. I guarantee you, there's billions of lost dollars in the annual operation of the DoD.
so this came out on the 15th of November from The Hill. The Pentagon fails a seventh audit in a row that says
Yep.
progress has been made. So it's seven,
Yeah,
seven
I looked
audit.
it up too after you just beat me to the punch on reporting it.
It's that's insane.
Thanks, Joe.
It's well, what's crazy is like, listen, again, I'm a liberal hippie, but Jon Stewart interviewed one of the representatives from the Department of Defense, and she was very
I'm on
condescending.
NPR.
She was very condescending. I think I sent you that video, and
You did.
I was like, man, Democrat or Republican, you have to look at this and go, man, the amount of condescension on this this panel is kind of amazing. Like, you're telling me you don't know where the money is, but now you're saying you can't be made to be irresponsible. Like, whatever. Like, it's just it's ridiculous to me. Um, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was obviously the the discussion of the murder of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson,
Hmm.
who I actually don't know when. Let's
I
see.
believe it was December 4th
Oh, cool! My
was when he
birthday.
was killed.
Yay.
And I believe it was December 4th because the article you sent talked about how there's been social media outcry and support of Remember December 4th.
Oh, good. I remember December 4th because I was born then. But what I think is crazy is like, I mean, I don't
We've
know.
been planning this from the beginning, Joe.
Yeah, he worked alone. I just want to point that out. He said it worked alone. I mean, I actually haven't asked your opinion. Reading all this stuff, what do you think of everything that's happened? I mean, good, bad, indifferent.
I've read a few different articles on this one, and man, the the emotional weight on this topic is obvious in every piece I've read. There seems to be very little actual journalism and a whole lot of opinion.
For
Um,
for for what I've seen is people just screen grabbing the comment section, which is pretty crazy. Of like every
and I've,
article.
I've seen that too, right? There's a lot of that. I think this highlights something that was very powerful in the election. The idea that the system is broken and we need to do something about it. That Americans are so upset with how things are going that in this case, Mr. Mangione, Luigi, felt that he needed to take it into his own hands.
Right.
I don't know the specifics because I haven't read any articles directly, but I feel like he had a back injury that completely changed the trajectory of his life, and that's what kind of drove him.
Yeah,
Because
I
I've
kind
seen
of
other clips that people have been like, "This isn't who he is. This isn't
yeah,
who I knew."
I read that as well. That he basically had chronic pain,
Mm.
and
And they wouldn't do anything.
yeah, they wouldn't do anything.
And knowing people that have lived in chronic pain, like it drives you mad.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
can't
mean,
sleep, and that erodes your mental capacity. Um, but again, it highlights the anger. Right, he's not alone, and everyone who's out there supporting him. The campaigns to give him money for his legal defense, which I think is kind of hilarious because he comes from an insanely rich background.
yeah. Well, the lawyer,
Uh,
I heard an interview with his lawyer, and his lawyer is very, very like one note answer because obviously the case is probably on. Obviously he's preparing for a case, so he doesn't want to
yep.
say a lot. But I think it was Caitlin Collins on CNN was like, "Would you take the money if?" And he's like, "No," and
They
uh,
don't need it,
yeah,
and it probably makes him look bad, right? Like it
right,
probably actually would hurt his defense more than
yeah,
benefit it. But I mean, like he doesn't need it, right? I read another article that I thought was actually pretty poignant. Maybe not poignant; it's probably not the right word, but I did think it was very informative about how Brian Thompson was an Iowa farm boy and grew up on the farm and went off to college and graduated, and his family was super proud of him. And then he worked his way up as an executive within the health industry. And so, like, on one end, you have this spoiled brat rich kid who went to elite high school, private school, went off to an Ivy League college, and then uh, guns the man down, shoots him in the back, no less,
Mhm.
and then runs. Um, Somehow everyone talks about how smart he was growing up, but yet he carries the manifest and the gun with him, which anyone who's ever seen a movie knows you get rid of the gun
Well, I think it was a ghost
or
gun.
manifesto.
What I heard, it was a ghost gun, so it doesn't matter if he, when they're not going to be able to track
It's
him.
not a traceable gun if they find the gun, but because he had it on him, it is.
Right. Well, I'll just say
The
this,
ghost
like,
gun is that it was produced without a serial number and not tracked. It is not that it's not trackable if they physically have it, which they do because it was on his persons. And then, like, I was reading the statement from the United Health. So there's United Health Care, and then there's United Health, like the parent company over all the subs.
right.
And that CEO was writing about Brian Thompson and how sad of a loss it was. And like people were laughing and mocking him and his response there. But one of the things he brought up was that Brian Thompson was in United Healthcare trying to improve the processes to make it better. Like he was trying to actively move the company in a direction where it was approving more procedures and was being less restrictive. Supposedly, I don't know. I haven't sat in the board meetings, but supposedly.
Right. I mean, all I've heard is the overall percentages. I think,
No, I mean the healthcare system in the United States is broken. You and I can talk about that till the sun goes down, which is not going to be much longer from now. But
I know we have very little. I'll just say this: like, I think what it did is it put a spotlight on how frustrated people are with the healthcare system in the U.S. since it's whatever. And I'm not saying it didn't happen. I saw the comments where it was like good, good for that guy or whatever. But mostly what I saw was people saying, "Hey, I'm having a really hard time finding sympathy." Like you said, he's a farm boy and worked himself up, but like he was still in charge of a major corporation that probably had the highest percentage of denials. They enlisted AI to deny people. It was like your this is the problem, right? Of like, he may like Brian may have been improving the process, but like how long was he CEO? However, my thing is this, to me it just shined a big flashlight. And again, the whole thing about failing upwards is we're talking about healthcare again, which we weren't really talking about it during the election. Kamala and Trump were running on. Trump was running on the economy and stuff and the border. Kamala was going after price gouging and stuff, which was important. But like now we're talking about healthcare again and how again this is a broken system and that this stuff doesn't work. And like it took the murder of a CEO for us to go that instead of it being.
I don't think the conversation has died. I think this brings it to the forefront a lot more, and I really like. I think what you said there is very direct too. Like it really highlights how the American people feel. One of the things that I read was that this has been an issue that has been very difficult for Republicans to really control because their base is also suffering dealing with the American medical system, specifically health
Well,
insurance.
it's
And so
not.
they're also just as up in arms and want it to be better.
Well, I mean, famously, well, I don't know if famously, Ben Shapiro, was decrying the outcry on the left from people that were cheering Brian Thompson dying. Did a whole segment on his show about how dare people do this, and everyone in the comments, and it's been talked to death. But 90% of the comments were like, "Hey, man, this isn't a right or left thing. Like all of I have been affected by healthcare.
Yep.
I don't want this person to die,
Right.
but I am
But there are
having
people on the right and the left who are celebrating the man's death.
right." And it's the
And
idea of
that,
like it's just hard to find sympathy for, like I don't want him to. It's just like Trump. Like I don't have sympathy for Trump. I did not want there to be two assassination attempts against him. I did not. I wanted him to play. Well, maybe. Well, he's right. Maybe I not wanted to play golf, not for like him getting shot to play golf. I didn't. I wanted him to be on the campaign trail. I didn't want him to be playing golf. But like somebody shouldn't post up on the golf course and try to murder him. He's giving a rally in Pennsylvania. somebody shouldn't be on the building, trying to kill him. Same with Brian Thompson. I wish these things were fixed. I don't wish he died. I wish we'd talked about this in the campaign trail and there was
Right.
legislation or something. And so,
Exactly. And the thing is here, right? Like I do have sympathy, right? Like he was a father, he had two kids and a wife. Now, admitting CEO of United Healthcare, probably got plenty of investments and
well, like a lot of
money in
people
the
are
bank, and
sorry to
they're
be a,
probably taken care of.
sorry to be a leftist shill, but like the idea is, yes, he was a father, had a wife and two kids, but like how many decisions had he made as a CEO or his company made that he is somehow aware of that had denied people care and cost people their lives? That's what people were saying. Of like,
And I actually, coming from that perspective on it, um, knowing how business operates, he was CEO for 3 years. I looked it up. So he started in 2021.
oh,
A company the size of United Healthcare is massive,
oh
and
yeah,
it would be very difficult to move it in a different direction. To make him accountable to take the office and immediately just blanket approve every medical request that comes through is absolutely idiotic. He could
yeah.
never do it. He'd be pulled out by the board and probably sued by the SEC for being irresponsible with investors' money.
Well, that's
But
that's also the point people on the left want to make about like we put profit into healthcare, of like,
correct.
yeah,
And
like
so to pin the blame on him is just wrong. It's short sighted. It's emotional. It's a surface level reaction of like he's the one to blame for every bad deed in the healthcare industry or health insurance industry. There's a whole lot of other things going on, regulation issues, right? And they're for profit organization. Like, okay, so like my immediate reaction is, all right, well let's solve this because
yeah,
that's what I want to do, right? Like that's how my brain goes. Okay, so let's just say health insurance companies are instantaneously not for profit.
yeah. I mean, my wife and I talked about this. She works in healthcare, and she said, she goes, this is an example. Like she does patient appointments through, they're
Mhm.
recommended through testing to get procedure, and then the doctors have to approve it and whatever. And her thing is, she's like, do you understand the like? Listen, she's in billing or scheduling. She's like, the amount of times like a doctor will say, "Hey, to for women to identify breast cancer, we would like an MRI. That's the best
Okay.
way that we have used to identify an MRI." She said the
Yep.
amount of times insurance have said no,
Yeah.
and so then
No,
it's
no.
like,
I'm
like
not defending that.
yeah,
I'm
like
not defending that in any way, shape, or form. But to pin the blame on one man or woman at the top of a health insurance company is just short sighted. Now, if you wanted to pin it on Brian Thompson, what I would be doing right now, if you really want to actually hate the man, go through his history in the company. What positions did he hold? Was he
yeah.
in oversight over these programs that made those decisions?
Yeah, the problem is, I
Right?
I mean, I agree with you. I don't know if that would ever see the light or how you would get a hold of that. I will say there has, and again, this is, I guess,
That
again,
actually probably isn't that difficult to go through his work history.
well, I'll say this, like the idea again of failing up is there has been some more reporting on United Healthcare. Maybe they were withholding medication for autistic people. It might
I
be
feel like there
illegal.
was some CEO at another large health insurance company that said that they were looking at ways of improving how they process or
Right.
approve policies or other things along those lines, right? Like um, the broader discussion, right? Your failing up theme, the broader discussion is the benefit here. It is bringing it back to the surface. How do we improve this?
Yeah.
It's not putting out wanted signs with the pictures of different healthcare executives on
Yeah,
the
I
street.
saw that. I was like, ugh, that's not good.
But that highlights the anger, right? Like this isn't a small issue. It has to be important.
Yeah.
People are suffering. Same thing with like housing shortage, right? Like this is a huge issue. We have to do more. People are suffering. And the biggest areas that we see in the United States right now that government is just completely ineffectual is housing and healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I
Food is
agree.
part,
Maybe
but
I'm.
housing and healthcare is the bigger thing,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll
I
see what
think.
we'll see what Doge does and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, I don't even know if I need to sell you on the idea. It just seems like and you know, to be honest, like I did have the malaise like a few days after the election where I was like, oh crap, you know. And I think some of it as you and I talked, I was like, man, we're just tired. We got to go through this in like 4 years. No matter what you think of Trump, you're like, God, there's gonna be like 7 news articles every day about some controversy, and I'm kind of tired of it. You know, I got to do another 7 years. You know, even if I agree with it, I'm like, oh, we got to talk about it again. I will say though that like, I don't. I mean, I am hopeful. Obviously, this is you know, this is how the country works. You lose, you don't move to Britain. You stay and fight, right? Like and also too like this stuff needs to be like people need to talk about like what's happening. You know, even with Biden, if I disagreed with him, I'd say, hey, this is not good. You know, like what you're doing is not good. And I think people need to be realistic about Trump and be like, I don't like this. This isn't good. Or I like this. And I think that's kind of like where I'm finding hope. The idea that, you know, you be here to like kind of catalog what is going on. And like there needs to be people to do that. You could give up
Live
and
your
like,
life. Keep moving forward. Don't give up, right? Like, yeah, policies that Trump changes or people he appoints changes will have repercussions. Keep moving forward. Keep fighting for what's right. Don't give up your identity. Um, don't let him steal that part from you too. If you hate him, if you love him, don't let him make you who they say you are, right? Like
yeah, that was,
prove that you're
I,
not the racist bigot that everyone says a Trump supporter is by still being out there and loving and supporting people of alternative viewpoints and ethnicities than yourself,
yeah, that's one
while,
thing
while still trying to make America better than
that's,
what it is. Make
that,
the lives of the fellow Americans around you better.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I, even on the left, that I disagree with. Like, call me a centrist or whatever, but like, I still hear this in some circles on the left of like, wow, this just reinforces that, you know, this is what America is, and we're, you know, racist and all this. And
Did
I'm
you
like,
listen to that interview I sent you?
I mean, I'm behind still.
It could
Uh,
be. I'm not going to get his name right. The
Jink,
guy from the Young Turks,
yeah,
Jink.
Jink, yeah.
Yeah.
I
One
didn't
of the
listen to that
things
one yet.
that they talk about in that interview. So that's an interview on modern wisdom with Cenk from the Young Turks, and one of the things they talk about is the purity requirement in the radical left at the moment, in the progressive left at the moment. Like if you're not 100% in alignment with us, you're not with us at all.
Yeah, I think I've talked about it on this pod, but there was Neil Brennan who wrote for the Chappelle Show. He's a comedian, stand-up comedian.
Hmm.
He has a
Yep.
podcast. He did a joke a long time ago that I just keep thinking about, especially now, which the idea of like a bunch of conservatives are together, they're all friends. A new conservative comes to a group, somebody's like, hey, I'm gonna bring a friend. This is John. Everybody meet John. Hey, how's it going? And they just start talking and they're like, hey, John's conservative. It's like, great, you want to go get dinner? So they all go get dinner, evening goes fine. Liberal or progressive, especially progressives, he said, they meet up, hey, this is Johnny's progressive. Do you guys want to go to dinner? And everybody looks at John and says, oh, you're progressive. Well, we'll see. And like that's the thing of like no, we'll see. Like do you understand that like Trump won through the right won through a coalition of people that are not on the same page. Like, but he had one or two issues that everybody's like, this is more important than everything. The left in a way needs to be like, okay, we need to focus on what's important. And if you think climate change is
Well,
important,
you brought it up during the election, right? Like Kamala lost a lot of support because of one or two issues that they wouldn't coalesce around.
yeah, yeah.
Israel being one that hurt her quite a bit. That may or may not have been enough to have moved Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk about that right now. I mean, that's one of those things I think history in a few years would be like, wow, really did. That really
But that,
did.
dear Lord, please, Democrats, please, 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 don't think that's the problem. Problem is, you stopped listening to people decades ago
Yeah.
and started preaching to people.
Yeah. I mean,
and your base is sick of it.
Yeah,
Listen to it.
we're running low on time here, but like the Bulwark, they do focus groups. Sarah Longwell does focus groups, and she said, yeah, a couple of years before this happened, people were talking about the economy, and I need to find the person in the quote. But I was, again, post election, like the day after, I'm listening to all these podcasts, and someone said, a leftist was, they're all doing like a post mortem, and they said, listen, when the American people say that the economy is doing poorly, you don't wave a spreadsheet in their face and say, but look at this chart. And like, so it's the idea of like, yeah, and
unemployment's low, the stock market's up. What are you talking about? The
I don't own
economy's
stock.
great.
Yeah, I don't own stock. Like, what are you talking about? So Evan, as we're coming to a close, is there anything you want to plug? Is there anything that you want to, talk about before we leave?
I'll plug the same thing I always do. Your Agent Guide, my YouTube channel, my website, Your Agent Guide, where I provide real estate tips and advice, help people connect to professional real estate agents in their area. Every once in a while, I'm on another podcast of Joe's that he does independently called Gaming with Grief.
Yep.
Check that out if you haven't yet.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into gaming, you can kind of go through that process as Joe moves through the themes of grief through video games.
Yeah, there's a new episode that's going to drop tomorrow, and it's about something that I really like. So instead of other episodes where like I do like the game, but it's always about death or sadness, this is something that's just like pure joy that I've been playing lately. That I'm like, man, I got to get out of these this kind of winter yuck where I look outside and it's overcast and it's windy. We had a power outage this morning. There was some work I was going to do outside, and I was like, well, the block is black, so I can't do any of that. So I'm just going to play this game that I enjoy. So
that's important, man. Right? Like there is hope at the end of grief. Grief doesn't have to be permanent.
No, I mean, the line that always sticks in my head is Nora McInerney, who came up with the terrible "Thanks for Asking." She was going through grief and interviewing people about it, and she gave a TED Talk, and her big thing that always stays with me is during the TED Talk, she said, it's not moving on from grief, it's moving on with grief. Like, it's part of your life, but you still have to move on, but like it's still part of your being, and that's kind of what I think of, of that when I'm like, man, I can't, what they always say, like, if you can't come up with it, just, quote someone who, steal it, basically. And it's like, yeah, that's it right there. Like, I can't come up with anything better. But yeah, the episode's coming out tomorrow morning is just about a game that just, I keep playing it, and it was $20, and I've played it for 40 some odd hours, and I'm just like, man, yeah, I'm like, man, this is so good, and like, I'm happy, and I want to log in and play it. And, there's something in the game called Gloom, but everybody there is fighting against it and trying to push it back. And I'm like, how fitting. Like everybody is fighting the gloom and like trying to push it back where it doesn't hurt people. And I'm still having a good time playing the game. So yeah, I mean, I'll probably have to have you on. We haven't been on for a while. I think maybe around the holidays or maybe January, we're going to have to do our great Avon beat me at a game episode where I pick another game and you beat me, because I think I mentioned another strategy game that I wanted to play against you, and I think you got very excited and said, I will beat you without even trying, or something like that was your quote. So like we did it.
Well, so there's the Dune strategy game,
right
RTS.
Yeah,
obviously you brought up maybe wanting to play Civ.
I think it was Age of Mythology, which I liked back in the day because there was more like a supernatural element. But I think I was like, hey, it's like $30 on Steam. And you said something like, I
will beat you without even trying.
Yeah, you're like, I don't even have to think about it. Of course, and I will beat you.
But you're not a strategy game player, so I'm not making fun of you. It's just like I do it all the time. You don't.
Yeah.
In February, Joe? Civ 7.
Oh yeah, they had a trailer come out. I didn't know if the release date was on there, but I saw that a new trailer dropped.
They announced it this week. So anyway, we're talking about gaming. We're not talking about the grief associated with politics and how politics is just a grief-inducing thing right now.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, just you're supposed to do this at the top of the video, but I'm not. Please like, subscribe. If you want to write to us, you can write to us at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. It's a general email for the other podcasts I do. Let us know that you're talking about the grief of politics. If you want to write to us and what episode you're talking about, so we would respond. Tell your friends and family. It's weird, even though we're two friends that have been doing this, they've known each other for a long time, that we don't destroy each other, or what's the other word? Crush. I'm trying to think of the other own. We don't own each other. We actually will probably log off of this and send each other adorable cat videos because our cats are adorable. They're adorable, yes. And we'll probably do that. So just know it's okay. It's hopeful, and even if Avon gets mad when we make each other mad or annoyed when we talk about taxes with rich people, we could still send each other cute cat videos at the end of the day and be like, I don't know about this Elon Musk, but look at this cat, just sleeping in a little ball. That's adorable. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. We will be back Next month, again, we used to announce what we were talking about, but like things are changing so fast, we don't really do that anymore. But we're here on an episode drops on the 20th of every month. I'll say this though too, as a quick note. I know we're running late, but I do upload videos to Spotify. The audio is there, the videos are there, but Spotify is very finicky about how you upload it. You have to do it manually. Things fail all the time. I have to physically watch as it uploads to make sure it doesn't fail. The best way to watch the show is, if you want to watch the video version, is YouTube. It hits 7 a.m. on the 20th. If you want to listen to the audio version, subscribe to iTunes. And we are on Spotify and stuff like that. The audio version comes up very early in the morning on the 20th. But yeah, the video version, the best way is YouTube. But if you like Spotify, you can use that. The videos just might hit later, so you'll have to listen to the audio there. I have tried over and over again to make it faster, but maybe it's because we have a smaller podcast that Spotify is like, I'm not committing the bandwidth, and you're going to have to wait for 3 hours for this thing to upload. Like, that's happened.
We're not Joe Rogan.
If I was Joe Rogan, that stuff would probably upload in like 3 seconds. I mean, my internet is okay, but it's just one of those things where I'm just sick of fighting, and it's
probably has his own priority portal for putting episodes.
Oh yeah, like the moment he hits it, there's a producer on the back end.
Thank you for giving us your time and energy and money.
Yeah, they're just like 7 doors.
Let's just make money off of you.
Yeah, 7 IT doors open for him, and me, I'm like back there, like, screw this guy, he's going in the basement. So again, they're on Spotify, but they take a little longer. The last one failed like 3 times, and I got really mad. So that one's got to be up. But everything is on YouTube. It's day and date on the 20th, either the audio early in the morning or the video there. So yeah, thanks everybody. We're growing the channel slowly but surely. We're getting more and more views. So remember to subscribe too. That's a big deal. People have been watching the videos. You can comment and subscribe. That's fine. I'll take the hit. You know, it's fine if you want to say that you didn't like the video. I mean, that's for some reason that doesn't. When someone's like, I didn't.
Not one of us were stupid. Tell us why.
Yeah, when someone says that, I'm like, man, it looks like my brain got an account and decided to comment on my own video. But anyway, I Tyler Durden myself with a negative comment. Anyway, everybody have a good week. Have a good month. Hey, Merry Christmas. It's coming up. And yeah, we'll see you guys after the New Year.